Hello, hello, welcome, welcome.
Well,
We're
what is
so
going on, peoples?
we are so happy to be here with y'all tonight. We are here for another episode of Black, Bold, and Brilliant. This is the Hearts and Minds edition. We have some really exciting things coming up tonight. My name is Asia Washington. I'm the co-host here, and
My name is Risshan Leak. I am her partner in crime over here.
we are here tonight with a great panel of guests to have this conversation tonight. As you know, we have a conversation about this legendary interaction between James Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni. But first, we're gonna talk to you a little bit about who we have with us tonight. So, starting off, we have Winter the Poet, a familiar face on the Black, Bold, and Brilliant panel. Winter made her debut in the 2018-2019 Salt Lake City Slam poetry season, and she creates poems about justice, healing, self-love, queerness, and the power to overcome. Winter is the 2018 Ogden Pride Poetry Slam winner and a member of the 2019 Salt Lake City Slam team. She also went on to be a 2019 Salt Lake City Pride finalist, a Rust Belt team finalist, and a Southwest Shootout team finalist. Welcome, Winter. Welcome back to the panel. So glad to have you back.
Welcome,
Thank you
Winter.
so much.
We also have Linda D. Addison. I'm proud to present Linda D. Addison, the author of 5 award-winning collections, including How to Recognize a Demon Has Become Your Friend, a recipient of the HWA Lifetime Achievement Award and SFPA Grandmaster of Fantastic Poetry. Welcome to the program, Linda.
Hey, happy to be here, hanging out. What's up?
Love it.
Next, we have Joanne Moore, also known as JT Moore. JT Moore writes magic with diversity, a programmer by day and author by night. She loves reading about POC protagonists and speculative fiction. She has short stories published in various anthologies and is an active member of the League of Utah Writers Speculative Fiction Chapters. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you.
Last but certainly not least, my brother J-Rod P. Garrett is a storyteller, educator, and co-founder of the Utah Black Artist Collective, lovingly known U Black, a performance poet in Northern Utah. He has performed with the Next Ensemble Poet Flow and at the occasional Poetry Slam. He's published poetry with the League of Utah Writers, receiving their first place prize for poetry in 2020. He is currently attending a low residency MFA at Sierra Nevada University for creative writing and working on his first novel, currently titled Breakers of War, and editing his first book of poetry titled Being Black in White Spaces. He lives in Bountiful, Utah with his wife and their 2 teenagers. Welcome, J-Rod.
Howdy, howdy.
Thank you
Good to
all
have
for
you all.
joining us tonight. Like we said before, we're here to talk about that legendary conversation between James Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni. It took place in 1971, and it was a sit-down interview talking about race, love, artistic inspiration, lots of things that were happening then that are still happening now. And so we're going to get into that conversation tonight. If you don't know or haven't seen the full conversation, it is 2 hours long. And so we selected a few clips tonight to have this conversation. And so I hope you all have some inspiration from this conversation, and also feel free to ask some questions. So we're going to get into the first clip here, and we're going to jump into the discussion.
One thing has changed, and that is the attitude that Black people have toward themselves. Now, within that change, I don't want to be romantic about it, a great deal of confusion and incoherence, will go on for a very long time, But that was inevitable. That moment had to come too, And everybody's put us now, well, I was trying for myself, after all, first of all, to elucidate for myself a theology and the effects of a theology, which I, at that moment, realized I carried in myself. It was not the world that was my oppressor only. Because what the world does to you, if the world does it to you long enough and effectively enough, you begin to do it to yourself. You become a collaborator, an accomplice of your own murderers. because you believe the same things they do. You know, they think it's important to be white, and you think it's important to be white. They think it is shameful to be black, and you think it is shameful to be black. And you have no corroboration around you of any other sense of life. You know, all those corroborations which are around you are, in terms of the white majority standards, so deplorable, they frighten you to death. You don't eat watermelon. You know, you get so rigid you can't dance. You know, you can hardly move by the time you're 14. You know, you're always scrubbed and shining. You know, a parody of God knows what, you know, because no white person's ever been, you know, as clean as as clean as you have been forced to become.
Yeah, it's true.
And you got somehow to begin to break out of all of that and try to become yourself. You know, it's hard for anybody, but it's very hard if you're born black in a white society.
So we're in Black History Month, right? And so this month is all about, you know, Black visibility and pride. And in this clip, we're talking about how Black people view themselves. And so, you know, Baldwin talks about Black people living in a white society and becoming accomplices to their own murder, essentially, while uplifting whiteness, this white ideal. And so how can or have Black people been able to hold on to a sense of self that is not influenced by whiteness in a white supremacist country or society? And feel free, any one of y'all, to jump in here.
I feel that you first have to realize that you have to be yourself unapologetically. To keep who you are, you have to just be yourself unapologetically, because you already know history shows us that a certain race is going to be against us for being unapologetically ourselves. You have to make the choice to do that. It's a choice. It's a choice to stay authentic to yourself so that you do not become one of the oppressors, because I completely agree. If you don't choose to stay authentically yourself, you will begin to become one of the oppressors. I grew up in Utah. I moved here when I was 3 years old. And if I did not choose and work hard to stay myself, I could understand where, not that I would become an oppressor, but where maybe the way that I acted or the way that I spoke could be swayed a little bit if I did not choose to stay authentic, because otherwise a lot of opportunities with me choosing to be authentic to myself have been taken away or pushed aside. So it has to be a choice. It has to be a choice.
I agree with that. And I also think it's an ongoing rolling generational evolution, because my mother could not have found paths to her self when at the points that she was at easily. It was easier for me to make and find some places, although it's still not easy for a lot of people in my age. And then my son now at 40, almost 40. So I think it's like, as more people find and are willing to stand up, because I'm serious about it now, but you know, this was a growth for me to get to. You know, there was a point where frowns and all that stuff would affect me. And I'm like, you frowning because you don't like my tattoos and mohawk? That's okay, because I ain't here for you. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, my mother never had it to say that. You know, she had me at 17. I had my son at 30 or something. So, you know, it's a generational thing. Each generation sees more ways to become authentic. What always hurts me now and hurt me when I started getting published, in particular with Dark Matter 1, where I was going out in bookstores and stuff, is that so the recognition is so many Black writers who could have been writing science fiction, fantasy, and horror hadn't been. Why? Because this society doesn't, that's a room you can't go in. And it's hard to push past that and get into that room. You got to be friggin' like stubborn, which is the only thing I can figure out for myself when people ask me why. I'm like, I guess I'm just stubborn, you know. And I came to that stubbornness. I wasn't always that way. So I think it's an ongoing generational widening of the ability And you see that in this incredible film, the conversation between the two of them, different generations, different recognitions, and different things. This is not a line I'm going over. Each generation has a different version of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I agree. But because we lost so much in that transition from there to here, our ancestors lost their whole sense of self, that we've had to create our own. We've had to create new forms of expressing ourselves, which we do. And I mean, in some of those forms, artistically, they weren't seen as art.
Yeah.
I mean, as in the Super Bowl halftime show, that was a form that once wasn't seen as art.
Mm.
And so now we create that art, we pass that art on, it becomes canon, it becomes history, and we pass that on to future generations.
And I think about the part where he says specifically, like, how we have to overcome the part where we believe that white is better at some point in time. Because for me, I remember growing up, and I remember growing up in a household where my mother was equally afraid of Black people as she was white people. So there's this dichotomy that was going on where it was hard to understand my Blackness because there was so much fear there. Fear that I had to figure out what that looked like. How do I break out of this fear? How do I become someone who like enjoys being Black and it rather than being afraid of it? I was like, the part of the thing that we see out here right now, I'm looking at education right now with all the stuff concerning critical race theory and seeing so much fear. And that fear is directed, I feel that fear directed at me as an educator. Like, you're afraid of me teaching your children that it's okay for me to love myself. And that was a war I went through to get to a place where I loved myself. And this just strikes me so as being so relevant, because I wonder how many of us are still engaged in that battle every day to simply love ourselves.
Too many lost to that war.
So in all four of you in your own respective rights are trailblazers. So what do you do to ensure that the next generation isn't left behind and they're brought along and pushed forward?
Exactly what me and J-Rod chose to do. We started Utah's Black Artists Collective so that we can ensure that our next generation, they have the road paved out for them, and we trying to make the road a little bit easier for them, because even still today in 2022, the road is still a little bit hard for us, and we still can identify with a lot of the things that they were talking about in these two discussions. And the discussions were back in the 1970s. So exactly what we are doing every single day. Making the connections and building the bridges, helping to continue to build the bridges for our next generation to cross.
And what I did is, when I first started getting published in like some solid places, maybe 30 years ago, I made a commitment. My first commitment is made to whatever light comes to me, to like with a mirror, boom, out to some others. And that's what I've been doing ever since. That's my first job. It takes away from getting published sometimes and my own personal projects. So worth it. Because it's not like I got anything to complain, folks. I do have a couple of awards here if I start feeling bad about myself. So, you know what I'm saying? So, what is my job? Is it to get more publications and awards, or to share the light? I made that commitment 30 years ago. I ain't giving it up now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a fairly new writer, so I started late, but what I want to do is to spread that Black joy through my writing. And, you know, we've got all the slavery books and everything, but I wanted to show some joy. I wanted to be able to have people who look like me in fantasy worlds, in any world that they can imagine, because I think if they can imagine that world, then they can imagine themselves in that world, and they can push forward to do their own thing in that world.
That is all the truth. 20 years ago, I remember bookstores, Dark Matter, with Cherie Thomas was the editor. She broke that wall down real fast. Going into bookstores and having young Black people come up to me and say, I never even knew I was allowed, even if they were doing it on the, you know, in secret. That's it, man, to be out there and be like, yes, we are here. First one, second one, third one, like that.
Literally everything I write is focused on just the idea of real unity. Like, I have a lot of conversations with folks all over the place where I make it clear, like, that if we're coming at this from self-love and we are trying to make a place where we all love ourselves, we don't got room for these terrible divisions that we put here, saying of, well, I'm right because I believe in this political thing, or I'm right because I believe in this political thing. Why aren't we working together? Why are we not doing the work to figure out what that looks like to find unity? That's what all of my writing is about. And also all my writing is like unapologetically Black. Like I'm writing a novel with I have a young Black man and then a Black gender fluid doppelganger in what I'm writing right now. Like, you have to make certain it's clear. If you're doing this work of unity, oh, I love myself. And just because you're going to come up and say that, well, you're going to come up and say something that's going to sit there and try and divide us and try and make us fight against each other and try and make us go back to that place where we hated ourselves, that ain't happening. Too many people bled and died for us to love ourselves today.
I think it's really important to have this conversation about imagination, because, you know, if the work that we're putting out there, the work that we're doing is based upon white validation, essentially, there's going to be so many roadblocks there. And so going ahead and doing it, knowing that you validate yourself as a Black person and knowing that other Black people see you and see the work that you're doing is like priceless. And I know that, like, in our society, you know, things like, you know, the Oscars and all that stuff is like a big deal, but like for a lot of artists that I've seen, like Black artists, it's like, oh, the NAACP awards meant more from you, or the Image Awards meant more to me because it's within our community, and it meant more to me to see other Black people celebrate me and celebrate us through the work I'm doing than to get like white validation, which can open some doors, but you know, if that's, you know, that's not our motivation. I think, you know, that's kind of like what they're talking about in this clip as well. Just, and I think also bridging the gap between like our ancestors and what they went through and pulling from that strength, because it can be hard to see where we've come from or the strength that we do have when it was literally tortured out of us, or, you know, we were killed because of it. And so, and we still persist. And so I think imagining a future where we don't have to deal with that anymore is going to be, you know, really important for us. So.
And it's coming along. I mean, I got to say, you know, I joke about the fact that I made a lot of my career in horror. Okay, when I was writing horror, there wasn't anybody else of any kind of levels of tanness happening too much there. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't a lot. Tananarive Due was in there, but, you know, and I thought, you know, I feel still, well, she's doing all right now, but I felt like for a long time she wasn't getting the kind of respect. But you know, horror is in its own little like weirdness, right? Fantasy, science fiction, everybody's like, yay, horror. So, you know, now I get a lot more in the last few years, but in those first few years, there wasn't a lot of recognition happening for me. I think even the Black community was like, what? In many ways, you know, I did have good conversation, but now there's no what, you know, because Jordan Peele's totally like, oh yeah, we like, and then even before that, you know, there was horror movies, but you just got to do, I mean, we'll get to that when we start talking about the question about writing, but you know, you have to just be authentic to yourself. And I got no explanation for why I was willing then to walk in the room, be the only tan person in there with horror. I got nothing, but that's all I had was what was coming out of me. So.
So JT, I want to ask you about it because Linda brought up a great point about, you know, touching on artists that or medium that isn't always widely accepted. And I know you said you write sci-fi, and I know a lot of blurs out there, if you will, grew up with Star Wars, and you know, and we have every alien under the sky, and we have one brother. You got all kinds of tentacles, all kinds of things represented, and we got Lando. You know, so
Yeah.
so what was it that drew you to that medium?
Basically, I was all into, I started with comic books. So it was that urban fantasy, sci-fi, just out of this world thing that just drew me. And I loved it, but I couldn't see me in it. I could not find, I mean, it got better. I mean, we had our Uhuras and Worfs, and you know, I followed all of those. But as far as major sci-fi or urban fantasy, I couldn't find me. And that was what drew me to it. I wanted to see me. I wanted to, you know, I looked when my son was young, I wanted to look for books where he could see himself in all, because I mean, his favorite was, he was in love with Static Shock. That was his favorite character of all time because it was him. So, and I wanted to give that to not only to him, but to other kids, other teenagers, other adults that really get into the urban fantasy sci-fi trope. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit later, some more about writing and, you know, freedom to create what we want. But Risshan, should we move on to the?
Before we move on, I want to touch on one thing because J-Rod touched it, and the brother James Baldwin touched it, and I don't know if a lot of people paid attention to it, but he was talking about the soap, and he mentioned to Nikki Giovanni how she was the cleanest in the room, and I know I can only speak for me, and I know J-Rod touched on it, but it was growing up in a predominantly white space. You felt that you were, if like I grew up in New Jersey in a predominantly white town, and so I would say I was probably one of the first black families to integrate. And so, you know, people touching you and trying to, you know, does it come off and things like that. And I vividly remember, you know, like with the soap when I was young, just because you don't know, you don't have representation. So was there ever that time for y'all where you felt like I need to, you know, I need to clean up, or I need to get this off because you're occupying a space that there's not a lot of you in?
Let me tell you the story I remember over and over again of when I found out I was Black in America. I was 3 years old, and I never forgot this. I was at the park with my mother. We had a cute little apartment with its own little cute backyard. I remember this, but we were at the park and with a girl I played with who was white. And I said, oh, you should come over, 3 or 4. I was like, you should come over to the house and we'll have a play date. And I wasn't in school yet, I remember that much. And whatever she said to me, which I do not remember, it seemed like she was saying, but you're dirty. And I remember saying, oh no, when we go home, my mom will always make sure we wash our hands, because the only reference for dirt I had at that point was the dirt in the playground. And we got home and I said to my mom, I didn't understand. I literally could not comprehend what was going on. And that's when I found out it was Black. I ain't even that dark. I mean, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, what the heck? And it took me years to hold myself and pull myself into wanting to just be human. Not male, not female, not Black, not white, human. Years. When I got out of college is when I grabbed onto that and refused to let it go up until now, not letting it go. Sorry, not sorry. Just human.
Mhm.
As
When I
my
oh.
experience was, my experience was a little bit different because first part of my life, I grew up in New York. It was a Black and Puerto Rican neighborhood. And then we moved, well, my parents sent me down south to live with my grandmother. And there was that whole neighborhood of these strong Black women who, I mean, you were kind of like, you do something wrong at this house knew, come back and told your grandmother. So it was just that type of a neighborhood. And they all stuck together, and it was a community. It was one of those, the community raised the children. And that was the first part, my experience growing up.
My experience growing up, I remember the first time I experienced racism that there were some kids down the street from where I lived who were members of my childhood faith, who decided it was a good idea to call me nigger. Now I am a loudmouth. I do not have an issue with standing up for myself. So I went to the clergy leader of that denomination, and I told them that this was taking place because I believed in my humanity at that time still. And they told me that they knew their parents, and therefore those children, there's no way those children would do that. And so for the next several years, I went through all sorts of things, from having the children calling me nigger to even leaders in the denomination itself making me certain that I lost touch with my humanity. And it took me until I would like to say I was in college when I regained it. But like technically I was. But I was also in my 30s when I finally realized that I was human and my life, that my melanin had value. Because those early experiences, unfortunately for me, were relentless, because being Black and white space, sometimes they never let you breathe.
Now, I can honestly say, and it's interesting to hear everybody's different point of views and perspectives because of how we all grew up so different. My family is originally from East St. Louis, Illinois. So my mom and dad, my parents always made sure that they took me and my brother back to Illinois every summer, literally every single summer. And we'd go, throughout the year sometime as well, so that I understood and could retain the value of knowing myself and loving myself as a Black woman. But what was a little bit different is I'm chocolate, and I love being chocolate. I've always loved being chocolate, but some of my light-skinned cousins, when I go to Illinois, would say, and it's funny, when Linda said, "But I'm not that dark." Well, it was opposite for me, because I've always been chocolate. So sometimes I would be like, "Well, I wonder why I'm so dark, why I was made so dark," because sometimes my cousins would tease me, my lighter skinned cousins would tease me about being so chocolate. So it probably wasn't until mid-elementary that I had friends that loved, and it's interesting how sometimes it takes other people, again, even when we're younger, to validate us. But I had friends in school who thought that my chocolate, me being this dark, was so cool. They wanted to figure out how they could tan to be as chocolate as I was. And that's why, I guess that's when I finally was like, wait, hold on, y'all trying to tan, y'all going in these lights and all that to get to this color. And I woke up like this. Oh no, ain't nothing wrong with my chocolate. I love every bit of this chocolate. But it's just interesting how even though my parents made sure to keep me around my family, it was still that little part that some of the family was saying, "Oh, but you darker than us. And that extra validation that we shouldn't need, but even at a young age, that validation was what kind of turned it around. I always loved being Black, but turned it around for me to love being this chocolate.
And let me tell you something. I said that and I realized that sounds kind of weird what I said, but I'm the oldest of 9. And if you have 9 kids and you got some stuff mixed in there, you're going to go through all the variations. So all of us are every skin tone, from light to super dark, from like, straighter hair to tight hair. I mean, all 9 of us. I literally show people pictures. I'm like, you don't understand. We got everybody who showed up in the plantation decided to party and jump in our genetic thing. They all here, and the 9 of us here. So, that light and skin and dark skin thing meant nothing in my family, since we all 9 carry some version of it. But it's like part of a way I joke.
Love it. All right, well, let's get this second clip all rolled in.
I think that the only thing that's changed in the last, since Martin Luther King, since 54, I think the only thing that's really changed is the Black woman. And what she has said is... No, I don't think she's changed.
I think she's become more visible.
I think she's changed. Because there was a time, let's say my mother, my aunts and things like that, they would say, okay, if that's the way you establish your manhood, I'm going to go for it. And my generation says, hey, no good.
Okay.
You must establish a new base.
I'll agree with that.
And we are, as a group, demanding that a new base be established.
Yeah, but be careful as a woman of what you demand of a man.
I demand that he be a man.
Yeah, but you can't
because
say,
the provision part.
Yeah, but you can't say you demand it. You have to suggest it.
Well, that's your ego that says that. No, I demand it. Now you deal with that.
All right. Okay.
I'll even
go with that.
I demand that you be a man, and I don't think that that's asking too much. Because if I wanted a provision, say I would get a camper. You know what I mean? I would get a camper that provides things. You know what I mean? You get an Army surplus kit that provides things. I need a man. And Black men have always been offered to provisions. People are either going to eat or starve to death. The men of the people were starving, and they were still the men. Had to be that way through that horrendous kind of war, but it had to be that way because sometimes you are not able to feed your family. Sometimes you are not able to clothe your family. Do you then also deprive them of your manhood and of the input that a man has? Who teaches my son how to pee?
Yeah, but
you see?
Yeah, but you're talking. I agree with you. I see that very well. But it's one thing to be in a situation where you see that where you see a future, however bloody, and to be in a situation where you see no future at all.
But you are. It is incumbent.
If I know,
it is incumbent that you see a future.
If I know what I'm demanding of you, in some sense, makes sense. If I know the fact the kid is not eating today or tonight or tomorrow, in some way makes sense. Yeah, then I can be there. But if it doesn't make any sense, and if I don't see anything coming out of it at all.
Will he eat if you're not there?
If you're on welfare, he won't eat if I am there.
This clip gets me every single time.
It just hits. I mean, it hits so hard for multiple reasons. And the one thing that really hit me is how he ended it, because a lot of times people don't recognize that is the welfare system is part of the demise of the Black community. You know, when you're told that if this man is living in your house, you cannot get, you know, bread, food, cheese, milk, you can't get your natural food to survive. And then so what's next? So, you know, as a caretaker, you're going to have to do right by your children, and unfortunately that means that you can't have this individual living in the house with you.
What I also love too about the interaction is, I just don't even know how to say how many times, oh my God, Nikki was the right one to be sitting there with him. Because the two of them, their energy was just like, yes, and respectful and you know, in 1971 terms. So I one of the things this made me think very strongly about is the reality of how a situation happens. I was the oldest of 9. There's 7 brothers in my family and 2 girls. My dad was not such a great person to be around. I'm just gonna put it that way. When I started reading Bell Hooks later on, and I just, you know, when I started reading her first book, All About Love, how much she was writing about my life, I'm like, how did she know? The fact is that when someone, everything that was said in this thing where it's like, Black men cannot be men out in the street, they cannot be men in the world, even for help with welfare, they can't be a father. To come back to a home and then not be able to be loving and caring, you know, the psychology of it, like it or not like it, that's the truth of it, right? But what happened is, again, generational evolution. When I hit my relationship, I still had situations to deal with, but you know what I wasn't going to be dealing with? Some of the same stuff my mom took in, because she had, that was her generational point. And then I think the same way, I mean, I have a son, but I also have a 7-year-old second cousin. And when she talks about what she wants. I don't remember being 7 knowing what I want. And you know, I'm like, she's been like this since she was 4 years old. And what I say to her is this, that I love that you know what you want, but no, you cannot have that now. But I love that you know what that. I don't tell her to shut up. But I grew up being told not to talk around grown-ups. You see the generational growth. Now, we all love when she telling us and being bossy. We don't necessarily react because that ain't the way the real world is, but we appreciate it. So, you know, that's the thing that Bell Hooks talks about, real love, which some of us grew up with, meant, you know, if your dad hit you, knocked you down, yelled at you, whatever, called you what, that he's your dad, he loves you. No, not acceptable. When Bell Hooks talked about love, it hit me on every level. Love being care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, trust. And you can now in each generation, now in our generation, we can, as women, we can say we want that. Or be willing to be alone. You know, which is, you know, but you know, you got to live with what you live with. So
yeah, watching this, I kind of felt like, you know, Nikki at that time had come a long way for like this kind of like Black feminist thought at that time. And I'm like looking at like where I am or where I sit in like my own ideology. And I'm like, I feel like I'm even further than that, but I'm like, I definitely couldn't have gotten here without people like Nikki and Bell Hooks kind of exploring these thoughts. And so I'm like, that generational change is definitely evident. And so I think another interesting thing here is just kind of like how heteronormative this conversation is. It's very traditional, and it's interesting kind of knowing what we know now about like James Baldwin, who was a queer man, maybe still holding on to some of these ideologies. that are very straight. So I'm wondering what you all think of that.
You know, I did hear him, there was one point where she did mention homosexuality and he said, yes, I know all about that. It was, I can't remember exactly, but I do remember him saying that, though his conversation was still the typical male role during that time. And yes, knowing he was gay, it was kind of interesting because I was expecting him to go give me a little bit more, but he just left that, which I found quite it was like I was waiting, but yeah, but her demanding was that budding and not necessarily agreement, but compromise between them was kind of like, yes, I'm demanding. He's like, yes, I can, I can accept your point. And how, yes, she was demanding, and he agreed. He was communicating. He was giving her somewhat what she demanded in that situation, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like he was trying, what I also sensed was, again, of the generation of the time, that he was trying to say to her, I really want you to understand this, to somehow take away pain. Nikki was like, don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, not that she didn't care, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So again, the difference in time and generation. I'm that person now. I started to call myself something else, but I'm that person now. Like, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, I walk in the room, you look at me, you don't like whatever, feel free to leave. It's America. Freedom is your choice. I ain't trying to be nice no more. But he wasn't just, I don't think he was just arguing with her. He really wanted her to sort of try to understand this difference between men and women and Black women and women and in this country and the whole abuse thing. But like, she was like, no, yeah, whatever, no.
I like where you're coming from, Linda, because the way I look at it is we are looking at a conversation with two people in two completely different time zones, not time zones, eras, because James Baldwin is in 1970s. He is, and to your point, JT, he is a gay man trying to represent a heterosexual thought in 1970. But you take Nikki Giovanni and drop that exactly what she said today, and she is in 2022 without even thinking about it, unapologetically saying this is what, not only what I need, this is what I deserve. And it's so spot on. Because especially we talked about it off air before when we first started looking at these clips. She has a son at this time, and you could feel the things going on outside of that interview, and she's speaking from lived experiences. Like, this is what I need from my brothers in 1971.
Why is it just the brothers that can give that? Was my question, because I am not heterosexual. So why is it just the brothers that we feel that can give that? She asked who's going to teach my son how to pee. I taught my son how to pee. Yeah, so why is it just, in fact, I can do anything, and I will say this, except for I don't have all the things that a man has, but I can do almost anything that a man can do. So I guess that's where the conversation kind of caught me, is that, like y'all said, it was a very heterosexual conversation, and it had me looking at James Baldwin like, bro, speak up for us a little bit. Say something, because no, I mean, it's just not it's just not the man that you can expect things from. And you can have certain expectations of what you want, but putting a gender on it was where I had to turn my head to the side, because I've done a lot of things, and still do a lot of things that is considered a male role, if you will. And yes, I did watch my daddy to know how to do these things to treat a woman right. But that doesn't mean that I have to be a man to do those things. So yeah, it just
Year
had me.
difference, 50 years difference. I'm with you on that one. That's why I said, don't call me man, woman, black, or white. Can I just be a friggin' human over here?
Right.
And you be a human, and can you be a human? Everybody needs to get out of everybody else's business and let them be a human.
Right.
I would
That
totally
part.
agree with that. I think when I think about this, I think about the nuance that we're like not talking about, like in Black community, how gay men still are hated.
Mm-hmm.
And now, no, I'm speaking as an androgynous Black man. I have been called gay literally most of my life, because I don't act like all the other boys do. I'm more sensitive. I'm more emotional. I just don't, I'm not interested in so many things that the young men around me were. I wasn't good at sports or anything like that, and everyone expected me to be. So when I'm listening to this part of the conversation, listening to Nikki talk about, I want a man, I think about the part where it's like, I think about the part where there's so much that's packed into that statement that she's not aware of, because we literally just don't get to simply be men.
Right.
We have to be this macho guy or this violent guy. Like I think about the halftime show and all of those men there, who there's a significant part of what they're singing about that comes from violence. And that's what's equated with being a man. But what if I want to have equated with being a man, being able to just hug my son and tell him that I love him no matter what he does, no matter who he chooses to be. Like when I'm listening to Nikki, I'm hearing that part of being able to be a man where you get to be all of your emotionality and not just that part that's the protector. Now, no, that doesn't mean I'm not a protector, but I'm more than that. And I want to be able to experience my manhood as being more than that.
This is what I love about the reading of Bell Hooks that I did before I even had my son, is that she does talk about the fact that men in this country in particular, Black men, whatever, are not allowed, do not know how to love. Just holding your son, love, plain and simple. And how it is the mothers and fathers who grow men like that. It is not just men to men to men, right? And when I reread her book, and my son was already in his 30s, I have pages of notes that I went through there comparing what she said to what I did with my son. I didn't come out too bad. I was happy about that. My son and I have talked over the years about it being okay for him to be sensitive. It's okay for him to be caring. He's 6'4", goes out with his friends in college and grown now. Women are always the ones that love him, not in a romantic way, because they know he's gonna look out for them, that he's willing to be their friend. It's fine. He's wanting to bring people home with him from college. Mom, can I bring this person? They're in this trouble. It's always, it was a woman in high school, a girl having some problem in her family. You know, so it's that learning, like you're talking about, J-Rod, is what the evolution of men needs to be. And mothers not to support that stuff. Be Nikki. Yeah, no, you don't get to come home and knock me down because you had a bad day. No.
I also think about what it almost feels like a tragedy that James was not able to show up as his full authentic self as a gay Black man on this platform. And it's such a shame that our society, like you said, J-Rod, that to this day, it's still not acceptable. And I just imagine what it would have been like to have James be up there as his full, authentic, free self and say what he wanted to say, which may have been a lot different from what he maybe felt like he had to say on this platform for it to be acceptable. And so, you know, that just feels like a tragedy that he wasn't able to do that. We got bits and pieces of that from him, but just imagining what that would have been like for him to be able to show up as his full authentic self.
I think that's the beauty of having these two speaking. That's the part. I could watch this, I don't know, 50 times and learn something from it. It was 50 years ago. They're two different generations. They're both well-spoken. When I say well-spoken, I mean able to communicate clearly what their feelings and thoughts were. Neither one of them trying, you know, to overtly like control the other one, but really listening. I always felt like I was like sneak watching on them, like like I'm not supposed to be watching this because they are in it to win it. So it was of a time, you know, and these times, and we'll talk about this, these times have changed, but not enough. Mm-hmm. My 7 brothers, I have had conversations, you know, about how some of them are handling themselves and some of them are not.
You're spot on. Both you, Linda, and you, Asia. It's sad when you see people who aren't able to flourish in their own bodies, who aren't able to be their full authentic selves. And I think, you know, we're seeing that outside as the world is moving in towards a more gender fluid state, and you know, the old regime is fighting back tooth and nail. You know, we are wanting people to really occupy the space that they feel they should and be the human in that space that they want to be. And my fear is that we see a lot of that in our own community. When you see like brothers that are our age and younger who don't feel like they could truly be themselves because of, you know, peer pressure and not being accepted. And it's sad, and it's really going to unintentionally stifle their growth.
Mm.
I think a really important thing when we're talking about Baldwin is in this conversation, like we miss the fact that he's a gay man because it wasn't known then so much. But then we look at his writings, and like I'm looking at The Fire Next Time, and he talks about like the reality which lies behind the words acceptance and integration. He says there's no reason for you to try and become like white people, and there is no basis for whatever for their impertinent assumption that they must accept you. The really terrible thing, old buddy, is that you must accept them. And I mean that very seriously. You must accept them, and accept them with love, for these innocent people have no other hope. They are, in effect, still trapped in a history which they do not understand, and until they understand it, they cannot be released from it. Now, those words are written to his nephew, and they're written about the relationship with white people. All you need to do is twist that just slightly and be like, he's talking about us understanding our own history, understanding what Black history looks like, understanding that we are so much more than just what we were told in our Christian schools growing up, and in those spaces where it looked like Jesus was the way. There's a whole one. I look at the term Black joy. Okay. I love the term Black joy. And like my earliest memories of Black joy all come from gospel choirs.
Mhm.
But that's not all Black joy is. Like, Black joy is when you watching Jordan making a slam dunk. That's Black joy. I'm watching Black joy when I'm reading the work here of Baldwin. Nikki Giovanni has glorious poetry. I'm reading Black joy when I'm reading her poetry, hearing her talk about how she doesn't want to have white people talk about what it was like for her to grow up, because it was wonderful. No matter how much she suffered, no matter how hard it was beautiful. There is so much. If we just look a little deeper into the things we have written, we get to, with the knowledge we have these days, we can see these people for all that they were, which helps us to understand better who we are. And accept that, like, maybe we're gonna be different than what we thought. Like, I remember leaving my childhood religion. If you had asked me 6 years ago if that was going to happen, I would have told you that that was not humanly possible. And at the same, and at this point in time, I'm in this space where, like, I'm trying to reclaim what is Black joy outside of a gospel choir, because I don't have a faith in a God anymore. There's a richness to Blackhood that we are still barely discovering.
That is so much the truth. I mean, the thing is that, you know, at this point in my life, I'm really acutely aware of the fact that you can't become your authentic self by disconnecting from your ancestors from the very beginning. And a lot of us can't go all the way back, but you can not. You know, I look in the mirror and I know I have slaves and slave owners in me genetically. What am I supposed to do with that? Who am I supposed to love? Who am I supposed to hate? So, you know what? I decided that's why I'm gonna go human. You know, I'm as an age now that, you know, I wouldn't dare put on a bikini and try to chop it. Although that bodysuit and those high top shiny boots. Anyway,
Hit them, girl.
outfit
They're calling to you. They are calling to you.
Once upon a time. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I'm not that young thing anymore. I used to be. And you know, and so what am I now? Am I old? Am I mid-age? What am I? So I'm going to stay human. And I just wanted to say real quick again what Joanne said. There is later on in, I think, the last half an hour of the 2-hour thing, when the subject of gay comes up. James is very clearly reacts like a gay man. He's like, tell me something I don't know. Nick said something. I mean, he clearly said it, okay? But again, this was 1971. I'm sure if they were around now and having this conversation, it would be a different kind of conversation. So it's amazing.
We do have a question from the audience about this clip in our conversation. They say, curious to know why there is so much talk about Black social problems coming from lack of father in the home. Is this misguided?
Would you repeat the question?
Curious to know why there is so much talk about Black social problems coming from the lack of a father in the home, and is this misguided?
You mean conversation? I'm not sure if they mean conversation between Nikki and Baldwin or anything that we have said, but again, at that time in particular, if you think about what I think about is Nikki with a child and being in the frame of mind she was in 1970 and saying, I am not accepting the situation, haven't had the history of it. I have that history too, you know, of having a situation where I didn't have a loving father image. But I did not, that did not stop me from accepting that men could be loving, or women, and Black and that kind of thing. But, you know, I think that that's what it was in the conversation of relevancy then, that it was a very big point. That wasn't the only point. That's why I love Bell Hooks so much, when she talks about it is not just, you know, the man. It's not even like in their conversation, I kept going back to Bell Hooks. It's not just the fact that a man comes home after not being able to be a man and behaves negatively in his home. It's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. So that's where I went when I was listening. I didn't really stay in the lane that area was coming up with.
And I wonder if that question is asking about like now, right? How we hear so much now, that all of the issues are coming from the Black father not being in the home, or not being able to be in the home, and is that misguided? And again, I can say, and this is just my opinion, that's definitely misguided, because there's people who grew up with single mothers that are doing amazing. There's people who grew up with two mothers, two fathers, that have done amazing and are doing amazing. So most definitely, I do. If I understand that question correct, I do think it's definitely misguided, because it can't just be blamed on that. And as you said, Linda, the Black father being in the home isn't always. It wasn't always a picture perfect situation. So this idea that everything went awry or astray because the Black father was not in the home or has not been in the home. Well, again, that's all to choices. And I know that how you are raised, that's a choice by your parents or your mother or your father, but ultimately it's still a choice. We can't just blame everything on, well, the Black father isn't in the home, or wasn't in the home, or was kept away from the home. Well, I'm sure sometimes not even just the Black father, but sometimes the father did need to be kept away for safety reasons or for other reasons, or sometimes it wasn't the Black father. Sometimes it was two Black fathers, or sometimes it was two fathers, or sometimes it was two mothers. So we have to kind of look at the bigger picture and not continue that misguided conversation, because it most definitely is.
I think about the part where in that conversation where Black fathers aren't in the home because of the fact that we have a system set up where we have ghettos. And me as a Black man, I know that my number one job, like I did not have a father who told me any of this. This all came from my mother. My number one job was to be able to make certain I could take care of my family. Nothing else mattered. That was more important than anything else in my life. If I couldn't provide, I didn't have worth. Mm-hmm. So we have these young men who are growing up in the ghetto, and they start families young because it's the ghetto. And it's part of so many layers of culture and discrimination and all sorts of things. But these young men are in these spaces where they're like, I have to make money. So they go out and they do drug deals, and they do the things, they sell the guns, and they're trying to make a living, and they go to jail because that's not how in America you're supposed to make a living. And they're gone. And then they become the scapegoat by which they say, this is why Black America has no values. We do have values. And as a Black man, my value is always taking care of my family above myself. Because that, and I have to fight that every day now, because I'm like, Well, if I'm human, is my only value found in making certain that my family is taken care of? And it shouldn't be. But how many Black men feel that way?
And I see that, to me, this whole thing really starts to come down to the bigger picture, systematic inequality and racism. That on every level, whether you're getting your nails done, whether you're getting psychological support because you're depressed, whether you're getting a job, so everything. It's so multi-layer that it's not like we just woke up this generation. Well, I'm way out this generation now. It's not like we woke up two generations. I mean, I'll be 70 this year, folks. So I'm just trying to get myself, where am I? Who am I? Where am I supposed to be in this conversation? But it's not like you just wake up one day, huh?
This is why you need those boots.
I know, man. Because you know what we got in our family? Deanna Warwick is related to us. Legs. We all got legs. Whether we 90 years old or not, we got them. So anyway, that's off topic. The thing is that we didn't just wake up Black yesterday and like, oh, we got to find ourselves. Ancestral from beginning, from the first foot on this land that was dragged here. So we have, it's so multi-layered on so many ways. I learned strength from my mother, right? You know, I learned from my mother that kids with 9 kids, and she had me at 17. What? Planned Parenthood was my best friend when I hit 17. I was like, no. But she had me at 17, but she went on and had 9 kids. And yet one of her biggest lessons with me that I never left was that you, as a child, you did a bad thing, but you're not a bad person. What is that? That is a humanistic, that is like the golden ring. I learned that from my mother. You can learn stuff from anybody, this multi thing of Black and men and the ghetto. I grew up in the ghetto. I tell people all the time because they're like, oh, you know, words about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm the great American ghetto story. I grew up there, baby. My mother and I didn't always eat if there wasn't enough food. The youngest ones ate first. I know all that stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, it is, to me, it is kind of misguided because I knew people who grew up with a father and a mother, who grew up with only a mother or only a father. And it wasn't, that was no indication of what they were, how they became as an adult. Because there were good and bad, or not necessarily bad, but maybe misguided on both sides. Mm-hmm. Some did, I mean, some succeeded, some got to a point and that was it. But it didn't matter whether there was a man or a woman or either, both. They were, and again, it was that community, or it was the person themselves, you know, bringing themselves up or listening to their mother or their father or the neighborhood grandmother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree. I feel it's misguided because you have to take a step back and try and figure out who's asking that question and why. You know, who's trying to control the narrative, because there are success stories everywhere. You know, and so while, to J. Rod's point, while his mom is saying, you know, you have to be the caretaker, you know, my mom was like, you know, when we were growing up, it was always, what are you doing after college? What are you doing after college? You know, it was never, you know, like, oh, you're going to just do it. It was impressed upon us early that we were going to go and get our degrees. And then we get to decide what you do. And, you know, and it was never like, you know, it doesn't have to happen right away, but you're gonna go to college and you're gonna get your degree, and then you get to figure out what that life looks like after that. And I'm not worried about how long it takes you, you know, but you need to, education is important, you know, and that's one of the things that, you know, it will always bring you out of the struggle that you're in. Education is the key to success, especially in our country, where it's one of those things that it's unfortunately, what right, wrong, or indifferent, it is part of the building blocks. And so, to J. Rod said earlier, like when these brothers are looking around trying to figure out what they want to do, education doesn't mean college degree. Education could mean you go in and work with your hands. You become a mechanic, you become a plumber. You know, it's controlling and understanding what education looks like, because it is different for everybody. So to say that, you know, is it misguided? Yeah, because it's all about trying to understand what the angle is by that person bringing up that point, and what are they trying to say? You know, are they trying to make us feel bad because of our you know, our past? Because that, you know, that's not, you can't control where you come, but you can control where you're going, you know, and that's the thing that you got to focus on.
And again, if we are defining our worth by these very limited terms, we're depriving ourselves of our full humanity, like we've talked about, and our ability to show up as our authentic selves, that we are complex human beings that have different interests and can do many different things. We're not just a provider. I'm not just a mother. I am also all these other things at the same time. We're doing a great disservice by not allowing ourselves to be free, or whatever that means for us. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that after this next clip here. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about, you know, what we're going to watch.
They say, well, why should a writer be free to write what he wants? When, say, a teacher is not free to teach what he wants, or a postman.
A teacher who is not free to teach is not a teacher, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, if I assume that responsibility, then I've got to be free to teach the way I see it. Angela Davis is precisely in trouble, not for all those nonsensical reasons given by those impeccable, honorable men like the governor of California and the head of the FBI, not for any of those reasons, but because she was trying to teach. And to teach in the situation in which black people in America find themselves, really to teach, is a revolutionary act.
Yeah. You solved it for me, because it's something I keep hearing. And they always say, well, why should the artist be free to do what he wants to do when nobody else is?
The artist is not free to do what he wants to do. The artist is free to do what he has to do.
When in fact, everyone else should pursue along those lines.
Yeah. So, you know, going back to, like, you know, showing up as our authentic selves, and like the freedom that we basically have to create for ourselves. I want to hear from all of you, because all of you are writers and creatives. Like, how do you, like, speak your truth in this world that's always trying to, like, drown out your voice, and shrink you and make you small? Like, how do you actually do that?
Oh my God. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jay.
I speak. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a loud mouth. I have no issue with being the loudest voice in the room. I have no issue with being that person who's just going to be like, I don't care if you don't want to really hear this. I'm going to teach you what truth is, what the reality of the situation is. And if you decide that, like, hey, well, we don't really want to have you around anymore, okay, bye. Because I believe that's why I'm here to do. I'm here to teach people how to be better people, how to human better. Mm. I'm not about to sit there and be like, well, I'm not going to live up to all of what I feel I'm supposed to be just because you're afraid of what things may come out of my mouth. I went to a writing conference just this past weekend where, like, people were super afraid of talking politics. That was the taboo thing. I talked politics as much as I possibly could, and brought people to be like, oh yeah, that is funny. Why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't we talking about the erasure of Black folks in literature or of the LGBTQ communities in literature? Because when we say we don't want to talk politics, that's what we're saying we're okay with. And I'm always going to teach. All of us get to be human. Whatever that humanity may look like to us.
See, we're teachers. To me, I feel like we're teachers, all of us, when we walk in any room, any space, out the door, on the street. trust and believe me, and I've said this before in other places, when I walk out of my house to go to the store and buy something, nobody don't care how many awards, don't know I have awards, don't know nothing about me except I got brown skin, tattoos, and a mohawk. And what I say to them is, your problem, not my problem. You know, so like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and you do it with that beautiful grin too. Like,
you know I do. Maybe it's my generation. I don't know, but there's always going to be a smile, because you know, and I have, you know, it's been joked about in the horror community that I have my saying be, I will cut you.
That's where that came from. That's where that came from.
I have a t-shirt. I have a t-shirt. One of the people, one of my fans got me a t-shirt with a unicorn with a blade duct taped on it saying, I will cut you. I wear it around here in Tucson. People are like, oh, I like that. I said, I know you do. So actually my saying is, change one of the F words into another F word. I will friggin' cut you. You know what I'm saying? Like, people ask me, have you had a problem with racism? And not in horror. I'm not saying it ain't there. I'm just saying nobody wants to be cut. It's choices, folks. So I never really thought about what I was writing. What I plugged into so much is just telling the truth in an authentic voice. I mentor writers, and I'm beyond blessed to see some of the people I've mentored go on and publish well and get a lot of accolades. Makes all of it. Not that I made that happen, they had to do the work. But what do I start with? What is your authentic voice? What do you, if it's horror, what are you authentically afraid of? Don't talk to me, sit down and write it down. I don't even need to read it. I need you to create from your authentic soul, because if you do that, it's going to come out. I was working with not so much working with a young Black poet here who asked me, how do I instill what I've gone through as a Black poet? And I said, you ain't got to do nothing. Just write your stuff. It's going to come out. You know, my work isn't always Black characters all the time. It's a lot of it in there. But I like, you know, I did a vampire story, and it was like American Indian, Black, and Chinese. But anyway, so, and the point is, but I love it when people say, you know, there's a horror writer, Jeff Carroll, who I love his creativity. And he always said he writes Black because he has kids and he wants them to see his horror is like hip hop horror and this, that, and the other. I'm like, I don't even know how to love you more, because he's being authentic to himself. You know, so that when the two of them got into that whole conversation about truth and everything, it really keyed me. And the other thing it keyed me on, then I'm going to shut up because somebody else might have something to say, is, you know, J-Rod, you ain't the only one that can talk a lot. I did. You hadn't noticed. The one truth I've been standing on lately, because you know you learn something new all the time, is choosing love over fear. And that seems like a simple concept, but it's not. Because if you're going to sit down and be authentic about what pisses you off, what makes you afraid, and what makes you angry, you are choosing love. But then if you take those things and go and hit somebody, that's not so much a choice of love. Unless they hit you first. I ain't the Dalai Lama. I'm just saying. So, you know, love over fear. They talked a lot about this in the truth. It's everything.
I tend to make it sound pretty. That's why I'm the poet out here who is unapologetically me. And some people don't like to hear it, but being that I'm a drummer as well. And so, you know, everybody loves music. If your poetry has a rhythm to it, a certain cadence to it, people are gonna listen to it. I've learned that. People gonna listen to it. It sounds like a song, and they don't even know you telling them about themselves and what they've been doing for all these years, and what we need to do a little bit better. Before they know it, they snapping and clapping and all that, and then they realizing that, oh man, you giving us a history lesson. So I stay as authentic as I want to be, and I want to be 100% authentic. But sometimes if you just make it sound pretty, people will be listening before they and get a lesson before they even know that they in the middle of a lesson. um I think that that's super important. However, we're all artists of different we write differently, right? We all write differently, but we're all getting our messages out there, and that's what's so beautiful. No matter what, whether it be horror, whether it be loud and in your face, whether it be a sci-fi story or it sounds pretty, they still getting the message that they need to receive. And so I guess that's how my poetry, it has a certain rhythm to it, so people will listen sometimes. I hope they continue to listen. I'm gonna keep putting a rhythm to it. I can't even help it. So my poetry it'll continue to sound like it has a rhythm to it, and I want them to keep on listening so they can keep getting these history lessons, because Black joy, Black history, overcoming, that's gonna continue. That's my poetry. That's who I am, unapologetically.
Yeah, I want us to keep, when I write, I want to put us as Black people in spaces that we don't normally inhabit. I just want, I want to just push it out there. It's like, yes, we're here. We're going to stay here. We're not going anywhere. I don't care what you say. That's kind of, and that's what I want to put out there in my books. I mean, because even, when you were talking, it reminded me of something somebody asked me as far as whether I prefer to be called Black African American. And I've known this person for a while, and I just said, why don't you just call me human or call me a person? And they got that. And I want to continue through writing to put that out there, to let people see, no matter what space we occupy, we are still human, we are still people, we are still worthy and valued. We have something to give, we have something to share.
Yeah.
I just wrote this poem called Neo-Americans, NEO. It's going to be an anthology called Black Fire this time. And in order to, when I wrote it, when it finished, and I do writing organic mostly, it just comes, like I hear it, like, like Winter says, like music, I just hear it and I write it. And then, I clean it up, then I look at it and I'm like, ooh, I like that. Somebody else in the room put my name on it. So Neo-Americans was so special to me because I did so much research to get the facts right, which again is kind of my blurred brain. I can't help it. Talking about where we first came to America as slaves from Senegal, and the whole evolution of what we've been called since we were here. From the first, I'm looking at the paper because I don't remember, but the first 20 slaves were called NEGAR. That's just, this is what I found. I didn't make it up, and then the whole evolution. I remember when Negro, being called a Negro was a bad thing and then a good thing. I remember when being called Black was a good thing, a bad thing, and then a good thing. As a community, I feel like we have really embraced all these things. They try to call us and we're like, when I hear I'm in Tucson now, but when I was in New York on the subway and these young teenagers would get on and be throwing the N-word all over the place. And I was like, look at you guys making them scared. Some people on the subway, they're clutching their pearls. I'm like, they just want to be heard, folks. They just want you to see them. You clutch your pearls all you want to.
Yeah. Well, we're coming towards the end here, but I feel like this conversation has gone deeper than I expected it to, but I'm so grateful that it went as far and as deep as it went. I feel like this is a conversation that needs to happen. And Again, just so grateful for all of you being here and sharing your light with us tonight. Before we go, Winter is going to bless us with a poem here during Black History Month, during Black, Bold, and Brilliant. And so we're going to give Winter the stage, and then we're going to close out the night. So Winter.
Thank you so very much. Thank you all for having me. I'm so grateful to be here again. I have the honor of sharing a poem by Nikki Giovanni. So I hope I do it justice. This poem is called Always There Are the Children. And always there are the children. There will be children in the heat of day. There will be children in the cold of winter. Children, like a quilted blanket, are welcomed in our old age. Children, like a block of ice to a desert sheik, are signs of status in our youth. We feed the children with our culture, that they might understand our travail. We nurse the children on our gods, that they may understand respect. We urge the children on the tracks that our race will not fall short. But our children are not ours, nor we theirs. They are future, we are past. How do we welcome the future? Not with the colonialism of the past, for that is our problem. Not with the racism of the past, for that is their problem. Not with the fears of our own status, for history is lived, not dictated. We welcome the young of all groups as our own with the solid nourishment of food and warmth. We prepare the way with the solid nourishment of self-actualization. We implore all the young to prepare for the young, because always there will be children. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Winter.
J-Rod, Winter, JT, Linda, it has been a pleasure sharing space with you all. It has been such a great conversation, thought-provoking. I just appreciate all you and all your beautiful brown faces. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So happy to be here.
Blessing to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all for making this a sacred space where we could be human together.
Yes, thank you all again for being here. Thank you to the Utah Film Center and KRCL for their support. Also, you know, this month is not over yet. And so on this Thursday, we have DJ Spooky's Rebirth of a Nation at Kingsbury Hall at 7 p.m. So if you're interested in that, check that out. And then we have on the 22nd, a film, Dionne Warwick, Don't Make Me Over, at 7 p.m. Continue to come back. We still got a lot of things going on during Black History Month. Lots of things to celebrate here. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. So I hope you have a good night.